The fatal shooting of a teenager at a protest in Seattle has gone unsolved for 6 years.
This is open in your face. How are there no answers?
Our investigation has uncovered new evidence and witnesses who say they've never talked to police.
Did police ever call you?
Not once.
Listen to We Keep Us Safe, a new true crime series on the Embedded podcast from NPR.
It's not your imagination. Booking popular experiences in our national parks can feel impossible if you're a mere mortal.
Can somebody tell me what the heck is happening with recreation.gov and backpacking permits? Because y'all, this is insane.
Going for a permit to backpack the Enchantments or a campsite on Diablo Lake is kind of like buying a lottery ticket these days, and somebody's getting rich.
When I tell you that I have been on that website, like right at the stroke of 7 a.m., gone. Walk-ups, gone. It was not even 7:01 yet.
The reason our parks are starting to feel like the Hunger Games arena comes down to bots, artificial intelligence, and the government's top spy contractor.
I just want to run away to nature.
I'm Monica Nicholsburg.
I'm Joshua McNichols, and this is Booming.
Today, I fought the bots and the bots won. So is there anything we humans can do to take back our national parks? That's coming up.
Happy Hunger Games, and may the odds be ever in your favor.
So, Monica, outdoor recreation is just a huge part of the economy in Washington state. I mean, a lot of people move here in part because, they like going camping and hiking and stuff like that.
It was a big draw for me.
Yeah, I know it's huge for you and your family. So I'm wondering, have you had a chance to go out and camp this year?
I have, but not in the places that I wanted to go, and definitely not on the budget that I had in mind. The national parks have just gotten really hard to access.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I know we did an episode on this a couple of years ago, and we found that at that time, it was still mostly a supply and demand issue. You know, the pandemic had driven a lot of people outdoors, and some of that was still going on at that time. And also, Seattle was growing really fast, too. So there were more people competing for the same amount of land.
Yeah, that's right. And there are still more people today trying to use these spaces than before the pandemic. But the big demand issue that we talked about then has sort of leveled off. And yet it feels harder than ever to access these parks. So there's something else going on that's disrupting this outdoor economy. And I'm not the only one who's noticed this. There's another journalist who also loves to get outdoors, and she did a deep dive on this. Her name is Heather Hansman, and she's the author of Powder Days, Downriver, and Fierce Country. And she recently wrote a piece for the nonprofit newsroom Republic Lands and Wired titled, "The U.S. Built a Site to Ensure Fair Access to Public Lands, Then Everything Went Wrong."
Ooh.
So here's our conversation. Heather, welcome to Booming.
Thanks for having me.
Can I bring you a personal story that maybe you can help me understand based on your reporting?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I really wanted to go camping in North Cascades National Park with my family the last weekend of July. It's one of my favorite parks, and I love the campsite right by Diablo Lake. And I was too late to get the campsites that they released 6 months in advance, but I did everything that I could to be ready for the batch that they release 7 days before your trip. I practiced, I set timers. The morning that they were supposed to be released at 7 a.m., I got up at 6 and logged onto my account on recreation.gov. I made sure my credit card was saved. I've been through the Ticketmaster dance before, so I was ready, I felt. And I opened 4 different campsites that would have worked for my family. The second it went from 6:59 to 7, I tried to put the sites into my cart, and every single one was reserved. So what happened here?
Well, first of all, I want to say that your experience is not unique. This is happening to a lot of people, and that's sort of where the genesis for this story came from. I had similar experiences, especially with river permits. I'm a big boater. And I had sort of heard rumors that this was happening to a lot of people, and all kinds, hiking permits, camping permits that are all managed through recreation.gov, which is a big federal clearinghouse website that manages most of our public land reservations these days. And I had sort of started to hear rumors that there were bots in the system and that bots were going in and grabbing these sites before people get to them, kind of like your experience where you're there. The second it opens, you're ready to roll, and even when you do it, everything is gone. And I had had a similar experience trying to get camping permits for my family and a group of my husband's college friends, and they all got snapped up. We got kind of worse campsites. And then when we got out onto the river, this is a river trip, nobody was in the campsites. So it felt like there was something fishy happening with the system. And so I kind of dug in to follow these bot rumors, and it turns out that there are people even bragging in forums on websites about the bots that they've built to get in there and grab up those sites faster than a human can get them.
I want to come back to your family's experience, but before we do, can you just explain what actually happens when a bot books a campsite or a permit on these government websites? I mean, who's making them and how do they work in practice?
Yeah, so I found a guy. I'm not like a particularly tech savvy person. I don't know how to build a bot, but I found a guy who has been really frustrated with the system. He's a web developer, and he started building bots to kind of prove that this is happening in the system. So there's a couple different kinds. There's ones that can go and scrape and see what's available. There's ones that know that the permits drop at 7 a.m. and are there at 7 o'clock, 0.000 milliseconds, and can go in and snap them. And then there's others that can kind of hold things in people's carts indefinitely. So there's a bunch of different kinds of bots. But the most common ones, I think, are the ones that are scraping for availability and that are going in the second that things open up and grabbing them.
And then who is making them?
That's kind of the tricky question because it's hard to track. And a lot of this is sort of anecdotal. And rec.gov is a federal website, but it's operated by a government contractor, Booz Allen Hamilton. And they've kind of said, yeah, we see some bot activity, but we don't think it's a big deal. You know, we're putting up the normal guidelines. And people like this guy that I found who broke through is saying that they're not actually maintaining the kind of security protections that they should be. So it's pretty easy for folks who have a little bit of, coding knowledge to build a bot like this. So I talked to an economics professor at the University of Colorado who is studying this, who built a bot that got him permits. There tends to be in sort of like a Bay Area tech scene where people are talking about it and bragging about it to get, Yosemite campsites and things like that. So there's kind of pockets all over the place where people are building them.
In the piece, you mentioned that the odds of a regular human landing a popular experience like backpacking in the Enchantments in Washington or rafting on the Salmon River in Idaho are really low, like 2% or less. And I think a lot of people who have tried to access public lands have felt this shift in recent years. So it sounds like bots are part of the problem, but I'm curious how much of this we can attribute to outdoor recreation just becoming a lot more popular since the pandemic.
I think there is, especially during COVID and post-COVID, there was a big push to get outside on public lands because it was safe, because it was a place you could kind of congregate with people. But now they've gone back down to sort of averagey levels, and we're still kind of seeing the same level of like crowding and people who can't have access to the places that maybe they used to be able to get outside. So I think there's also sort of this administrative issue, and that as things have transitioned to these online booking systems, the way that we think about reserving places and scheduling getting out of them has changed.
Okay, and so this web developer who you found who wanted to prove that the bots are a big part of the issue here, can you walk me through the experiment that he did and the sort of control and what he learned from that?
Sure. And he's a really funny guy. I kind of think of him as like the Robin Hood of rec.gov, and he has gone and used bots to get permits and then given all of them back because he's also reached out to like the Forest Service and the Public Land Administrations and to Booz Allen Hamilton to be like, hey guys, I'm getting in here, it doesn't work, and they've kind of pushed him off. So it's sort of it really does feel like an experiment.
He's like a white hat hacker of rec.gov.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and I watched him run this test where it was when cancellation river permits come up in March. So it's like at 7 a.m., all these permits are released. And he had bots running, and he'd also been able to go into the system and look at the code. And he said this was pretty easy to do and see which dates were going to be released. So he had a little bit of knowledge that like the normal public wouldn't have. So he had his computer running these bots, and he had a friend sitting right next to him who was trying to manually click. And they went in at the exact same time, and the bot got, 5 desirable river permits, and the human got 0. And they had the same information going at the exact same time.
And just to be clear what we're talking about here, these are highly coveted rafting permits, like some of the hardest to get in the country.
Yeah.
And so just getting one into your cart would be a very rare thing.
I play the lottery. I do this every year, and most of these permits I have never gotten.
Okay, so now let's talk about camping, which I think is one of the lower barrier ways that families can access the outdoors. In the Wired piece, you shared this very relatable story that you also mentioned earlier of your husband trying to get a campsite and getting outfoxed by the bots. So tell me a little bit more about what happened there.
So, yeah, we were trying to get this permit. They opened it 8 a.m. My husband's college friends were coming out with their kids to do this trip. And so we knew the dates we wanted. It was in a time of year where this is in kind of canyon country in Utah where it's not particularly desirable. It's hot. Not a lot of people were trying for it. And he went on the second they opened and didn't get anything. And we knew which campsites we wanted and got skunked. We got some campsites that were less desirable further down the river. And as we ended up floating through that day when we did the trip, nobody was in the campsites. And we talked to the rangers throughout, which is really part of the frustration in this, is that it seems like, there's an interesting financial component to this where booking these campsites is, anywhere from, $5 to $35 or something like that, which can be a financial barrier for some folks. But for other folks, if you have a bot and you want to go get a certain campsite in July, you spam the bot and grab every Saturday in July, and maybe that's $100 or something like that, but you're going to get the campsite. So folks who have the faster access can go and grab all those places and maybe hold them and block them, even if they're not going to use them. And then that limits access for other people. And I talked to rangers on the ground who are seeing that, and they don't have great repercussions for cancellations or for people who don't show up. So it becomes this kind of equity question where there's a financial piece to it and a technology access piece. And then it also is this kind of administrative question where in a lot of these public land agencies, staff has been reduced, funding has been reduced, and there aren't people on the ground who can kind of police this and make sure it's fair.
So just to be clear, you're saying that folks who can afford to lose $100 are hoarding these campsites just to have options of when they might want to use them, and then rather than releasing them back to the public, they're just sort of holding on to them?
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And there's chats and forums about this and people kind of saying that they're doing these things. It's anecdotal in a lot of ways, but there's enough anecdotes that there's a pattern.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen these, sites that I tried to get left open, and I think a lot of other people have too. And just from a purely financial, heartless perspective, it's not actually a problem financially for the parks that this is happening, right? Because they're still getting money for those campsites.
So this is another interesting piece too. They are getting some money, but the way that Booz Allen Hamilton, the contractor that runs rec.gov, set up their contract is that they've had it for about 10 years now. The site had existed before, but they rebuilt the site to make it, in theory, more accessible for people. And they rebuilt the site for free, which Congress thought was a great deal. And then part of the contract was that they would get a percentage of the fees on every transaction. So every time you sign up for a campsite or submit to the lottery for something like the Enchantments or the Wave in Arizona or these kind of desirable things, the contractor is getting a percentage of it, and they won't release what that percentage is. They say it's kind of trade secrets. I think a lot of people, and I've talked to rangers about this too, feel like, oh, okay, well, like I entered the lottery and I didn't get it, but it's okay because the money's going to public land, which is something I believe in. But that's not 100% true.
So Booz Allen Hamilton, probably best known as the cybersecurity government contractor, private company, is getting a cut of every dollar you spend on recreation.gov.
Correct.
And do you have any sense of how much money they're making?
So they made more than $140 million in the first 4 years of their contract.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had estimated that they would make $87 million over 5 years.
So they're making a lot more money from this than they expected to.
They almost double what they projected. More than double, probably.
Okay, so Booz Allen and the federal government have partnered up to create this website, recreation.gov. It seems like it's plagued with bots that are making it harder for everyday people to access public lands. Are they doing anything to try to crack down on this activity? And do they even have the staff to do that?
They have said that they are implementing kind of all standard bot reduction security measures. And they have gotten sort of touchy about it when they've been asked. There was a conference where it came up and they avoided it. And they've kind of, in their internal messaging have said, tell people bots are not a big deal. So there is sort of a disconnect between what's happening. And also the frustration from the public is that things aren't changing. And there's been, you mentioned Ticketmaster earlier, which is kind of like swamped by similar things. And there's been legislation to address things like the Ticketmaster issue, like anti-botting laws. But because those laws only address events, like a concert where there's, I think it has to be over 100 tickets or something. There's some number barrier that has to be above. But because all these camping reservations count as individual events, the laws don't apply to this specific instance.
And maybe this is a cynical question, but do you think that Booz Allen has an incentive to crack down on bot activity if bots are maximizing the number of transactions that they get a cut of?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. This is like my sort of assumption from what I've seen. But their contract has been renewed. They're making money. It doesn't seem like there's much incentive on their part to change things. And I've talked to people at Booz, and the guy who runs the program, said, I want my kids to be able to get on public land. I think it's important to make sure this is fair. So there is, they are thinking about it, but the difference between the messaging and the action seems like there's a gap.
Has there been a popular park that has solved this that maybe doesn't use the rec.gov system? And I guess my question is, can anything be done to make this system more fair?
One example that gets pointed to is the Grand Canyon. And the Grand Canyon is one of the most desirable rivers in the entire country. It's really hard to get. And they run their system separate from rec.gov, even though it's a national park. And that system is a weighted lottery. So you can only apply a certain number of times. If you apply and you don't get a permit, you get bumped up the list a little bit for the next year. So it's very tied to the individual account. You can't bot it. And there's an equity piece involved in that too.
So in the Grand Canyon's case, the longer and harder you try, the more likely you are
the
to
better
get
your
a
chances
spot.
are. Yeah, exactly. And so that feels like it makes it a little bit more fair. Folks who study this have also said that being transparent about the microeconomics and how many people are actually getting the permits is helpful. Somebody mentioned the Montana hunting lottery, where they're very clear about how many people apply, what your chances are of getting it, how things work. That helps people decide if it feels worth it to enter a lottery or sign up for a campsite too.
And in terms of the system we have now, at least with recreation.gov, what are the consequences for everyday people trying to access our public lands? What's the big picture here?
I mean, I think the thing that feels the scariest is that access to public lands and resources becomes a much more rarefied thing that is driven by technology access or financial ability. I'm somebody who's lived and worked in the outdoor world for a long time, and we already see these kind of equity issues percolate, and that these activities can be very white, can be very wealthy, and this kind of thing, wedges those gaps even further apart.
And of course, the dream of our national parks and public lands is that they are a shared resource for everyone.
Yeah, we're all public landowners, as they say. But if that isn't true on the ground, that undermines the whole mission of it, I think.
Well, Heather, thank you so much for being here. It's been really interesting talking with you.
Oh, I'm so glad you're thinking about this. And hopefully you actually get some camping in this year.
Thanks. We'll be back with more of Booming after a quick break.
The midterm elections are drawing near, meaning fact-based reporting is more important than ever. I'm Libby Dankman, host of Sound Side, where we bring you news and conversation rooted in the Pacific Northwest. We delve beyond the headlines to bring you different perspectives on stories that impact your life right here in Washington State. And we're easy to find, Monday through Thursday at noon and 8 p.m. on KUOW 94.9 FM. Or you can listen anytime on the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Monica, I got to ask you one quick follow-up question. You mentioned this company, Booz Allen Hamilton, is like a cybersecurity contractor. Why are they doing campsites?
Well, they're a big government contractor, and the government needed a website to coordinate this very complicated task of all different types of permits that release at all different times across public lands in all 50 states.
This really takes me back a little bit to the conversation we had a couple years ago, because it reveals how much and how quickly things have changed.
Yeah.
I mean, back then I was getting that line from rangers too, that this is really just about lots of people want limited amounts of land. And there was this awareness that bots could be playing a role. But back then, it was a lot harder to create bots on your own. We didn't have all the AI tools that we have today. Mm-hmm. And also, even professional services that would use bots like CampNab and others that would help people reserve these sites, they couldn't purchase them for you. They would just take you up to the point of purchase, and then they were stopped by CAPTCHAs, and by the terms of agreement for using, the reservation sites. And so you'd get a text message if you signed up for one of these services, and then you'd have like 10 or 15 minutes to actually purchase the site.
You still had to do the human thing of putting your credit card info in and checking out.
Exactly. And you could have your credit card info in there ahead of time, but still it required this last step for a human. So that was kind of a limiting factor to how big a problem this sort of bot activity could be. And also, the people who wanted to do it sort of illegally, they'd still have to build the thing from scratch. And that was another limiting factor. So, rangers would say, we know it's a potential problem, but it's not that big a deal yet. But it sounds like now it has just grown phenomenally. And, one thing I've been looking into a little bit is how easy it is to get by CAPTCHAs now.
Because of AI.
Because of AI, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a cat and mouse game, but you can sort of fool browsers into thinking that you're a human by, acting in these sort of random ways.
AI agents can impersonate humans with more fidelity.
Yeah, I've seen videos on YouTube of like how to avoid bot detection on sites like Amazon.com. Many of them are advertising a legal service because it's legal to scrape public-facing sites, but it may be in violation of terms of service depending on how you're actually using that service. Browserless is one of those companies that offers this. And the barrier of entry is so low now. I mean, I had a conversation with Claude about how easy it would be to do this and, kind of laid out a plan. I didn't do it, obviously, but, it just shows me how easy this would be to pull off.
Yeah, the ordinary person with a Claude subscription can probably build a campsite scraping bot now. And it does seem to be like there are a lot of loopholes being exploited here. Figuring out how to build a bot that can get around CAPTCHAs may not be illegal. There have been some efforts to crack down on bots at the federal level, as Heather mentioned, but those apply more to like a ticket master, something with a large number of tickets. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, this resource that's so core to the American identity, I mean, I think Teddy Roosevelt said there's nothing more American than our national parks, is kind of caught in the gray area while we figure out how to make this more fair.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing us this story.
Yeah, I'm glad I at least got to the bottom of it. That's it for Booming. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. And, we're always looking for great episode ideas or, economic mysteries, that kind of thing. So if you have an idea for something you think we should cover, something related to the economy in the Pacific Northwest, send us an email at booming@kuow.org, or you can call us and leave us a voicemail at 206-221-7158.
And big thanks to those of you who are donating to the show. Booming is part of KUOW, which is a public radio station, and it only works because people donate. If you want to be one of them, you can go to kuow.org/booming. And thank you.
Our producers are Lucy Suchek and Alec Cowan. Our editor is Carol Smith. Music is by Alec Cowan, Blue Dot Sessions, Artlist, and Music Bed. I'm Joshua McNichols.
I'm Monica Nicholsberg, and we'll catch you next time.
On Pocket Science, we explore the fascinating scientific research happening in our own backyard. On the latest episode, studies show psychedelic drugs can have a profound effect on people with depression or PTSD. A Seattle cancer doctor wondered, could they also help his patients face their terminal diagnosis? He joins us to explain how that question would transform his career and the way he thinks about mortality. Take your curiosity with you with Pocket Science on the KUOW app or wherever you get podcasts.